Hi, everybody. I'm sure this is now a good time to start. Wishing all of you a very good evening. I'm Praneet. I head the undergraduate business for upGrad, as well as the university partnerships for upGrad abroad. Um, Super excited to be hosting this space for you. I'll introduce myself. I'm a master's student from the University of Pennsylvania, the Graduate School of Education in the US. I've done my PGP in global education entrepreneurship. And so I'm going to be taking you through uh, a really super strong guide, a robust guide to making or drafting or articulating the right CV or the right student resume for yourself. I would just request my colleague Arushi to give me the co-host right so I can share my screen. But remember that I'm not just talking in my capacity as a head counselor or somebody who heads the undergrad business or grad division for upgrad, but also in my capacity as a student some years ago when I drafted my CV um, for applying to UPenn, which is one of the best universities in the world. UPenn is in Ivy League school, plus it is number two in the world for the kind of course that I did, and plus I also applied for my job at upgrad, so which also means that I had to make another CV um, for a job. So I'm going to give you both the perspectives. I would love to answer any questions if you guys have. I know you guys have asked me a lot of things, and I will make sure that I definitely answer each one of them. I'll start sharing my screen now. So, guide to CV writing. I think the first thing so part of how I've designed this is I'm going to make it very brief for you in terms of pointers on what to do, what not to do. But I'll quickly jump after that to my own CV and show you how I would like a CV to be made. Now, while I'm not talking on everybody's behalf, I'm just talking about from an employer's perspective, but also from an academician's perspective. That if you're applying for a cybersecurity course, what's the most important thing for me to note? If you're applying for a data science or a psychology or and actuarial sciences course, which subjects in your bachelor's or your 12th grade are the most important to me at this point? So all I'm trying to say is that sometimes it is extremely important on the linkage that you draw, on the bridge that you draw, and if your student resume or your CV is intensive with that information. I think here's the slide that I always show. I think I'm going to repeat that one more time. Just take a quick picture if this is the first time you're seeing this slide. While the core components of everything that we mentioned during a graduate application to a master's school, I mean, for an MBA, for MSDS, for MSCS, for MSIT, any master's level course that you're applying to in a grad school, these are all the things that matter. So even when you talk about your CV, your GPA should be on your CV. Any academic honor that you've received should be on your CV. Any project work, any research that you've done should be on your CV. Any extra portfolio references or um, any work that you've done, if you want to attach a sample of the work, it should be there. On the auxiliary aspect, your work experience 100% has to be there. Now, this is more important, integral, imperative to your profile as a master's aspirant or a postgraduate aspirant abroad. Your work experience, internships, online courses, extracurricular activities, volunteering, awards, entrepreneurship. Now, as I go further, I will also keep explaining to you why each of these are so important to a graduate school. Why is it that grad schools? So the word that I'm going to be using constantly is called a grad school. Grad school is a graduate school, which means schools that offer master's courses or graduate or postgraduate level of courses. Now, why is your GPA important? Because it shows um, an academic faculty member who's assessing your application, or an employer even, that how committed you are to academics, how consistent have you been through each semester, and what is the level of academic success that you've maintained for yourself. But remember that your academic credibility has a lot to do with your core personality at work, right? Not everything to do, but a lot to do. Then your research or the projects or any field work that you've done is extremely important because it highlights or signals to a grad school or an employer that you went out of your way, out of your academic routine to make sure that you were researching, you were delving more into things that made you curious. So do you feed your curiosity or not? Do do you step out of the way to have your objectives met or not? Have you followed something through in and throughout? Have you so when I mention that I research, that means something that I took out time, I took out energy out of my routine to finish something that I wanted to know more of. But projects actually show me as an employer or a grad school faculty assessment person that when you completed a project, that means you learned how to work with the team, you learned how to lead a team, you learned how to internalize, embody, and stay accountable for your own responsibilities, but you also followed it from the beginning through the end until it reached a conclusion. So you can actually manage a typical project for yourself. Your portfolio is largely your work. Your work is your portfolio. So every single thing you've done, I think it signals to the grad school that here's what I have consumed as content, and here's what on my CV is mentioned. Look, here's what I did out of it. How have I applied all my learning somewhere? Work experience is important. I don't even need to explain that. Internships are important. I don't need to explain that. Online courses are important because you've why online courses should go. So remember, I'm talking about the circle because the first point I'm trying to make in this whole exercise is what has to go into your CV, right? Online courses, 100% yes. Why? Because it shows someone that, hey, while I'm doing a traditional conventional degree, I'm willing to learn or reskill, upskill myself with 100 things that are not a part of my degree. So I may be enrolled in a bachelor's degree in business analytics or bachelor of business administration. However, I'm do and I go to a very normal university, but I'm taking a course from Yale, or I'm taking a course from Harvard, or I'm taking a course from Cornell, which are some of the top 10 universities in the world on business analytics, because I've got it in myself to make sure that I reach deeper into the science. I reach deeper into each tool, Python, SQL, R, W, Power BI, all of these. And I want to know how these function. And my university is not giving me enough, so I did something else. Plus, online courses are sometimes actually grad level courses already. So you show them your academic readiness that, hey, here's what I've done. And here's what my normal syllabus was, but here's what I did extra to ensure that I'm graduate school ready already, right? Extracurricular activities are over abused, so I'm not going to talk much about that. But remember that extracurricular activities, the most important thing is what kind of activities have you taken that can go in your CV that demonstrate you're a good leader. Leadership demonstration is extremely important. It is inevitable and it is inexplicably so important that you can't bloody miss it at all. Volunteering, extremely important. Community service, the fact that you're selflessly devoted in the pursuit of something that fills you with purpose. These things are what grad schools look out for. That, hey, I'm going to work with my friends. I'm going to teach someone who needs to be taught. Uh, I'm going to be helping everybody on campus. I'm going to have or internalize the campus spirit in myself. So include everywhere you volunteered. How socially invested are you, right? Because everybody wants a compassionate, empathetic classmate and your university mate rather than someone who walked in, did his part, left. Awards and entrepreneurship, of course, the fact that you're super self-resilient, uh, self-reliant, uh, and independent, and that you've decided to work on something and you're solving a you're constructively solving a problem in the world. So entrepreneurship has to go into the CV. Here's another important thing. Uh, Part two to what should go in your CV. Statistics. So I'm going to start from the right to the left. Statistics and associations. Who are you associated with? Which brand or organization or entities have you been associated with? I remember I was on this research project with the UNMGCY, the UN Major Group of Children and Youth in New York, and I met uh, the then the then president of one of the student of one of the global student organizations that there are called ISEC. Her name, if I'm not wrong, was Anna um, Sandria, if I'm not wrong. And I mentioned to her that, hey, I work for the UN and XYZ, and she said, well, I think that is a brilliant step, not because of which capacity are you in at this point, if you're an intern or if you're working in a small or big role, but the fact that you're associated with the UN, you're associated with the mission of the UN, you're associated with the scale of UN, you're associated with the fact that the UN is trying to do such, is trying to pursue and effectuate and actualize such bigger goals in the world. And you're a part of them, which means you're a part of the team that brought them to existence. You're part of the team that will help the world realize them. You're part of the team that will help the world achieve them. So my point is, while she was really, really, really senior to me, uh, she was just trying to explain me how this little decision of my life to serve the UNMGCY as an intern is going to take me a long way. So I'm saying associations are extremely important. So whichever brands or organizations or entities you've been associated with, mention them. Statistics is in one sentence. If you want to take my advice, always quantify every single work experience that you've ever had. Always quantify every single story that goes down in your CV. Now, CVs are not for stories. What I mean is, if there's a certain project you're mentioning, work X, or you're mentioning an internship, always quantify your stories. Track record of success. Always ensure, hey, listen to me. So there are so many students who are saying, is this for bachelor's, for master's? For heaven's sake, it makes sense to everybody. Even if I'm applying for a job, even if I'm applying to grad school or UG, it doesn't matter. The point is, most of these points are going to stay uniform. Now, track record of success means I'm not just mentioning my work experience or my internship or my research or my part-time work. I'm talking about exact progression I had every single 6 months, or every cycle of 3 months, every cycle of 6 months. So how do my cyclic progressions look like at workplace or my college or my campus club, XYZ? Uniqueness. What makes me unique is what grad schools want to look out for. Have I done something that nobody's done? Have I stepped up to a responsibility, stepped up to a challenge when nobody else did? And finally, leadership. Did I start a new campus club? Did I start a new initiative on campus? Did I build a new robotics club in the campus? Did I start uh, a specific technical skill enhancement club in the university? Have I had a turnkey solution to what campus was trying to face as an issue? At work, did I start a new division? Did I start a new branch? Did I jumpstart a new line of business? Have I started some specific project or some specific activity that I scale? So all of these are linked. What did I start myself? What did I take up the initiative for? How unique was it? As in, how much courage and audacity went into the fact that I started something, taking the entire onus on myself? What has been the track record of my success in that? Have I followed it through, or did I just start and leave it? And then finally, statistics. How much quantification can I give to that experience? So remember, these things is what I'm going to talk about in the next 20 minutes or so. That everything that goes in your CV has to be very strategic, very, very, very strategic to the exact role that you're applying for, to the exact data science or cybersecurity or psychology or HR or BBA or machine learning, or whichever course you're applying for. There are specific things that can go in it. And then here's what I was mentioning to you. Have you taken responsibilities that others did not? Mostly, have you volunteered for strategic projects? Sometimes what happens in your bachelor's degree or your master's degree or at certain work environments or your jobs is that it's not, some set of things that you do are not a part of your job description or never have been, but you took them up because you volunteered, because you wanted to be a part of the team that decides or has a say or is instrumental or orchestrative in the final strategy of the company, in the final HR policies of the company. So if you had a chance to make an impact, did you volunteer, even if you were not being paid anything for it? Which is why community service or social work is so important for them, because they really, really, really honor and value that. Uh, and then finally, your interdisciplinary contribution. I think I was speaking to this Harvard faculty member when I was studying with UPenn. She was one of my classmates. Um, uh, and Dr. Jennifer was speaking to me about how Ivy League universities, and in fact, at large, most universities, which are top 10 or top 25, have started valuing interdisciplinary contribution so much. The fact that how do you demonstrate your cross domain skills? How did you understand or learn your cross domain industrial or theoretical knowledge? How did you apply those learnings to actual work environment or work challenges? But more so, how did you merge or make sense or coalesce finance and marketing and plan something or design a product with them together? How did you design something from with product engineering and marketing together? How did you work with HR, finance, marketing, and operations together? So I'm saying cross-domain understanding can always, cross-domain experiences can always be listed on your CV. Finally, now that I've given you a good background, what exactly is a resume? A resume is not I think the $1 million question here is a resume different from a CV? A resume is a formal document. It's mostly one page. A resume will always be one or maximum of 2 pages wide, and it has to talk about your background, your accomplishments, your skills, and that is it. Your student resume talks about your academic background primarily, and then it talks about some part-time work, research, internships you've taken on campus, and it talks about all the skills you've gained. Now, skills are of 2 or 3 types. One are transferable skills, one are technical skills that you apply to a set of particular job. Some of these are transferable, some of these are not. Um, Now, I'm going to be answering how to write a resume for your first job when you have no experience. I'm going to be speaking about how do you identify the most marketable skills and experiences. So I think part of this thing is just finding the right marketable skills for yourself. And then finally, how to format your resume to show them off, as in show your marketable skills up. But also wanted to highlight that while a student resume is a one-page document, a curriculum vitae, a CV, it can be as long as about 10 or 12 pages also, but it's very academic intensive. It has almost every single comprehensive detail experience mentioned. Again, a CV stands for curriculum vitae. Here's something, so I'm going to take you through a set of tips on finding or articulating the right CV for yourself. Uh, Remember that your resume is not a list of everything you've done. Remember that. Whatever course you are applying for, let's say it is Master of Data Science, my CV should talk about what data science tools do I need to use. My CV should talk a lot about the academic background that I have with computer science or data science in general. If I don't, then, and if I do, then how much did I score in specific subjects like machine learning, like Python, like business intelligence, like data engineering, like SQL, no SQL. Um, let's say how much have I scored in NLP? How much have I scored in time series or linear regression, logistical regression. So all the important subjects as per data science I can mention if I scored really well, or I tell them my GPA if I've scored a good GPA. Next, all the online courses that I've taken up in a field closely related to data science or analytics only. Next, I mentioned how much data analytics on the job or hands-on training have I done or internships have I taken. But remember, if I'm applying for data science masters, my CV has to show them that I'm academically ready for a course like MSDS and I know what I'm talking about. Now, most of you are thinking, hey, but I don't have anything. Well, that's something to think about. So I'm giving you food for thought here that, look, you have to be careful that if you're applying for something like this, might as well spend some time, uh, let's say about 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, and build that credibility for yourself in a subject. Now, I come from UPenn, so I've not ever learned any other way to think about these things. Because if you want to go to some of the best schools in the world, they've got to do things that nobody else is willing to do, right? So here's another tip that rather than using generic headers like work and volunteering, use research, international experience, teaching experience, and finally leadership experience. Not necessarily don't copy these terms. I just mean that sometimes you've not had work experience, but you've had internships, you've had an international semester, you've maybe while in college you've taught some juniors of yourself. So uh, you can make specific unique headers. You need not always mention the conventional or the most stereotypical uh, headings. I'm sorry. Include a variety of experiences. So make sure that um, CVs or a student resume is not always about telling them your work experience, right? Um, Sometimes it also means that you mentioned the diversity of every single thing you've done. You've held a leadership role, or you were a part of a student organization, or you were a part of volunteering somewhere for HelpAge India, or CRY, or XYZ, or you've done internships, you've done service learning, you've done philanthropy, you've done projects, freelancing, study abroad, and part-time positions. Now, here's what I want to tell you. I received a 100% scholarship for doing my course at UPenn only on the basis of my CV. Now, I did not give a one-page resume there. I gave an exact, comprehensive, lengthy document of everything I've done, including my entrepreneurial, my startup journey. But I gave them a lot of things on what I did. But the point is, that's not important. The important thing is your CV holds that much value. Remember that. How you write about your experience often times matters more than the experience. So how do you quantify your stories? So for example, someone here asked me, it's written here, I would, how do I quantify my work experience effectively and efficiently? Ah, so remember, so let's look at it this way. I am telling you now that I ran a startup from 2016 and to 2021, right? And it was called EdQuest. And I used to facilitate academic and cultural exchange courses around the world. Now, when you'd ask me, how do I quantify it? So hold on to that, and I will show you in my CV how did I quantify that. What do people want to see on your student resume? So 6 seconds per resume is what someone spends in the first glance. And then remember that if you're applying for a specific job or a specific course, then only mention specific experiences that have some relation to the exact job or course you're applying for. So ultimately, you want employers or grad school faculty to clearly see the connection between your experience and the open position. What to include in a CV? This is the most important slide. So it has your GPA, and if you've received your degree with honors or any academic award like Dean's List and all that you can mention, any relevant projects, if you've written research papers, that's 101% important. Any research work or any research paper you've authored has a 250% weightage than your GPA actually. So GPA as well is very important. But if you've got not a GPA for let's say about 3.2 on 4 and not 3.8, but you've got 5 research papers to your credit, you're better off, right? So, I mean, also depends where have they been printed, if they were in an international journal or if they were in a local or college or journal. But the point is, they really value it. Remember that. Any certification and online courses, I'll show you a quick glimpse of my CV and mention to you what all did I include. Work experience, whether you've got a full-time experience or a hard-time or a part-time experience, it is imperative that you mention the set of responsibilities. What did you do when you quantify the experience and references the 2 or 3 folks that you worked for, you worked with, that you want to mention. Now, some of you always ask me, hey, I've got no work experience. What do I do? What do I do about it? So here's all the things that you can do. One is any volunteering experiences. Volunteering is not social work. Volunteering is that I did 100 things on my college campus that nobody else knows, or I was a part of the Rotary Club, or I was a part of Inactus, or I was a part of Erasmus, or I was a part of any other global student body, or I was a part of my campus club in robotics. I was a part of the campus club on technology or circuits or XYZ, or I actually was helping my mother or my father in running the family business. So everything you've done, which gave you good, hands-on experience, mention it. Even if you've attended certain conferences, mention that. Part-time jobs, maybe you work part-time while you were in school, or you tutored students, taught them, or you helped your family in a small business. Always mention that. It demonstrates your employability. The fact that you know. So I think one of the most important skill set that we underestimate is the power of a consumer, sorry, the power of an employer, the power of any person like you and I to handle a consumer. So this entire skill is called customer service. If you know that, if you know how to handle a stakeholder in his experience or her experience, you've pretty much gotten you what most companies are looking for at this point. The fact that you can handle a client-facing role, the fact that you can take care of their needs, of the exact requirements that they have. And so, like I mentioned, student council, or you were developing new skills, or you worked in a team, or always mention that, right? Uh, Here's something that is extremely important. Writing. So, how do you find the right content? This is, I think, by far my second last slide. And as soon as I'm done with the slide, I'm going to right away jump into my CV and show you how that looks like. So here's how you do it step by step. The first thing that you're supposed to do is whatever course you are applying for, whatever job you're applying for, start researching. Put down the key terms on a paper of what exactly that role requires in terms of my skill set, in terms of my academic background. If I'm applying for a master's course, what kind of exact theoretical subjective knowledge do they need? What kinds of hands-on experience do they need? Which kind of tech tools or field work or research work are they actually looking for? But put all of these together, the key important terms of what they need, or what the job is about, or what the course is about, and then highlight all the abilities that they've listed in the JD or the course description, the skills and the values listed within. And then finally, try to extract everything from your own personal account or personal records of everything you've done that pertains or is closely attributable to those things that they're looking for. Sometimes things don't match up. When they don't match up, try to find an experience in your life that give you that skill set. Now, you may not have learned that skill set directly. For example, being a leader is mostly taking an initiative, stepping up to a challenge rising to an occasion when nobody else is willing, and trying to solve something all throughout until the day it's done. So trying to lead a few folks with a collective purpose, with a mission, with a clear vision of where you want to be, and you've done it. So remember, so whenever they need something that you don't exactly have, you can at least uh, give them a similar experience I gave you that skill set. Now, all of this is not really important. Sorry, all of this is not always doable when it comes to hard skills like Python. If you don't know it, you don't know it. But all the softer skills or the human skills that most jobs look for, or most grad schools look out for, they're doable. And so, what is the difference between technical versus human skills? Uh, Technical skills are skills that are required and can be learned or are only useful on the job, like Python, like programming in Python, or using SQL or Tableau or R or Power BI. For example, think about blockchain, think about uh, artificial intelligence or cybersecurity or IT or networking or sorry or network engineering. Very specific technical hard skills. These are job specific. But then there are human skills that most colleges look out for, like being a good leader, being a persuasive speaker, being a great community organizer where you can mobilize a certain set of students into uh, taking up or pursuing or following a good initiative, communication, decision making, time management, and finally problem solving. Now, while uh, these skills are not always expected of you, but having them and highlighting experiences where you learned them from really amps up your CV. Here are here's the last slide, and something that's extremely important is quick tips. Uh, I'll go one by one with these. Keep it to a single page. So any student resume is always going to stay limited to one single page and should be. Uh, and remember, like I mentioned in the first slide, student resumes are not about every single thing. Rather, student resume is only about things that actually make sense and that actually is relevant to what you're trying to do. It's not everything you've done. It's just things that are relevant to the course of the job that you're doing. And action verbs. For example, someone was asking me, how do I quantify my stories? I think this is the most important part, that if you're talking about, hey, I was a CEO, so I led a team of 3,500 individuals. I acquired three companies during my stint. I achieved a revenue of 3.5 million USD every quarter. I spearheaded the partnerships division for these guys. So use those action verbs like improved, guided, designed, led, established, managed. They add more weight to what your role has been through each experience. So sometimes I think not the so remember there was a slide where I told you, I can take you back to the slide that um, yes, how you write about your experiences often matters more than the experiences themselves. Include the same words and terms from the job listing. So remember, there's a concept called applicant tracking system. Can I see by raise of hands how many of you have ever applied for a job or applied to universities and you've never heard from them, or you were like outrightly refused or rejected and you still can't believe how, or you still can't fathom how? Can I see by raise of hands? So there's just eight of them. 16, right? So most of these are actually using a concept called application tracking system called ATS. And so they just quickly scan through and see, does your CV or your resume have the words that the job is for? If not, then yeah, you're out. So the fact of the matter is, when you use the same words as the job description, you use the same words as the things that they require largely as hard skills and soft skills and transferable skills. Uh, you've got to use them. You've got to demonstrate the fact that you know them and you're the right fit for the job. Also, uh, this this thing is also called transferable skills. Problem solving, decision making, being a good leader. These are transferable skills from one workplace to the other to the other. So if you're a bachelor's degree holder and you're going for a grad school, mention all your transferable skills like being a persuasive speaker, decision maker, problem solver, um, being good as a thought leader, being a research fellow, all of these things, right? Um, you've got to customize your resume. The same goes out for even if you're a student. You've got to make sure that you build a tailored student resume for every single course you're applying for. If it's more than one domain, if it's a cybersec course, then it has to be a little different from if you were applying for a data science course. If you were applying for a psychology course, things have to be different because every course has to specify. So your CV or your student resume for each course has to mention the important or relevant subjects of that family of subjects that you're doing. And of course, proofread it, make sure someone reads it for you. And finally, include your contact information so they could contact you. But also remember to include two um, references of people you have worked with or worked for. Remember, you can include the name of your professor, your leader, anybody that you want to include. But just remember that this is important because they're genuinely interested to know who can vouch for your talent, who can vouch for your experience, who can vouch for all of these things. If you give me a quick minute, I'll just quickly uh, open my resume. Meanwhile, just put down your questions, please. If you guys have got any questions, please put them down. Right. Um, so although this is the 2021 version of my CV, I haven't really had the chance of making a 2022 CV. But remember that this CV got me a job, and this was the CV that, without this term, I actually applied to UPenn with. So remember, now here's the most important part of our entire space on CV building. Now, your summary is one of the things that I spoke lesser about, but it's extremely important. That how do you sum up everything you've done so far? And your summary should have your background and the exact ambition that you have, your background and the exact goal or the career trajectory that you're about to embark on or are looking for. Like, for example, if I was a student, I'm a computer science student with extensive knowledge about Python and C++. I am willing or I am looking for current opportunities to delve deeper into these tools and start building products with them. Or I am looking for a data analytics intensive course to build my career in DS. So make sure that you're mentioning where you're coming from and where you want to go. So here's how I mentioned that I'm an entrepreneurial leader, a founder of two educational startups in India, and I have had then, I mean, now is my ninth year of working, but then it was 7 years of experience with the education industry, the travel industry, learning and development, HR, software as a service. And I also led from the front lines an international not-for-profit. Um, Now, work experience is really important. Let's go here. So here was my first startup. I mentioned quantifying my story. So I mentioned my exact duration when I was in the US, because after that I started pursuing my degree. So I kind of left the role to a part-time, left the full-time role. Now I was the CEO, but because I applied through the CV, I remember, to a strategy role, I mentioned that I was a chief strategist because it's not that I didn't think CEO would be valued, but I just knew that I have to use the right keywords for ATS to pick up that, hey, he's done some ample strategy work, which is why I mentioned that I was a co-founder, but also the chief strategist of the entire startup. Now, I mentioned between these years, we scaled from 40 lakhs to 35 crores in 2 years. I mentioned we captured over 100 plus schools. We expanded services in 15 countries. I onboarded XYZ schools and brought 26 CR. I led a team of 8. I set up cross units. This is where I was mentioning cross domain experience is extremely important. So I mentioned that I set up a lot of cross units in my own company with product engineering, marketing, sales, and was running lean product cycles to try out what works, what doesn't. I set up physical infrastructure in India. So the point is I've used a lot of verbs in it. And then I was the CEO and the chapter chief for a specific student entity. And then my educational background. So I've done my fellowship in global education entrepreneurship. Now, this company was an edtech company uh, that I was applying for. So it, it was extremely important for me to mention that I've done an educational degree and I've done my B engine. So here's the other startup that I mentioned. Now, when you don't have, so remember when I told you during the beginning that sometimes normal headers would not fit your profile, but sometimes you may have to write some personal header for yourself. So I knew that when I was talking about the next door, the second startup in my life, it was just barely 6 months to when I was building this CV. And I thought that it's not really a startup. It is incorporated in India, but it's not really a startup. It hasn't scaled to that level. So I just will term it under a personal project that I'm overseeing. Because remember, I was applying for a job, and I didn't want to project that I'm full-time invested somewhere. So instead, I did mention what was true, but didn't put it in my work experience. I mentioned that it was a personal project. Now, the logic I'm trying to give you for you to know is sometimes to explain your case better that you have a full-time capacity to work somewhere, and what you're doing is just a personal project that you're purposefully invested in or have an ambition for, but this will not intervene or interplay or intertwine uh, into the investment of energy in the job that you're applying for. Similarly, if you're doing a part-time work on the parallel, or if you're doing a specific online course, but you're applying to a graduate school to, let us say Harvard, you have to make sure that you put the impression that, hey, and I'm sure if it is the true impression that I'm doing things, but I'm doing them on the sides. I'm willing to be full-time invested in your course or your jobs. Remember that. Uh, Now, here's something that I extremely think is very important. Please pay attention to this. I was mentioning about online courses and certifications. I did about 17 of these in between 2020 and 2021 during COVID, 17 of these, right? But I was very clear. What do I have to mention? Remember, the job that I applied for was a strategy job. So I mentioned all the online courses and certification. Now, how is this important? This is important because it gives a signal to the employees that, hey, this person has stepped out of his CEO's shoes, his fellowship shoes at UPenn, actually took out the time to do more studying, to understand strategy more. So you would say that I have done a micro masters in BL from UQ. I did advanced valuation and strategy, business strategy management from Wharton, business growth strategy from Darden, platform strategy for business, go-to-market strategy, omni-channel strategy, human capital management, operations management, principal business negotiations, and agile and PM professional certificate program, which is called the PMP. So I hope what I'm saying is making sense. I've chosen very specifically that then I mentioned all the transferable skills because I knew that technical skills I don't have because I mean for the next job I didn't have the technical. I was a leader, I was a CEO, but my startup was very different to what this company used to do. Organizational development, speaking, business development, leadership development, sales, change management, metacognition, organizational development. So jab bhi, whenever you write skills, mention that. Mention the fact that, sorry, highlight within your CV all of those skills. Organizational development is the skill to turn around the business model of any organization to a slow progression or a fast, expedited, exponential progression, which is why I mentioned that from I think we went from 40 lakhs in our first year to 35 crores in the next year. Right? So remember that. So how did I turn it around? Similarly, I've shown a very high consistency that when I took over as a CEO of a student body, we achieved a 284% year-on-year growth, and the sales were 81 lakh rupees instead of. So I think before me, it was about, if I'm not wrong, I think about 30-ish lakhs. Right? So yeah, close. So then the fact that I've been a speaker, um, I have mentioned plenty of things here that I spoke at the Indian School of Business. I spoke at different colleges as a speaker as XYZ. So remember that. BD, I've mentioned multiple sales roles. That what have I done on a sales level, all of that. The fact that I'm a leader, that I'm a salesperson. Sales, I mentioned that my individual sales were 81 lakhs. Just my sales alone were 81 lakh rupees. So the fact that I think I must have mentioned it somewhere here also 19.5 lakhs. So everywhere I mention my sales. So remember, whichever skills you talk about, your experience has to back it up. And then I mentioned that I got a full scholarship. Uh, I mentioned that I won the National Award for Operational Excellence. Um, and then finally, of all the conferences that I've attended in New York or across the world, I attended UN conferences with UNICEF and major group of children and youth. I attended conferences in Europe. Now, why is this important? Because I think when you want to signal to an employer or a graduate school academician expert that, hey, sorry, academic expert that I'm quite international in my approach. I am quite globally tuned in my approach. I am aligned to a fact that I can thrive in a global international ecosystem. Yes, remember that. Um, so it's extremely important to know, I have had past experiences of working closely with international stakeholders, which is why I've always mentioned here that I was working with 15 countries across the world, schools in 50 countries across the world. The fact that the international organization I was a part of was in 128 countries when I was working there. So, and also remember the fact that don't forget that verbs are very important. What did I embed? What did I create? What did I hold? What did I achieve? What did I lead? What was I responsible for? Uh, and then my international experience. And so also I think one of the important thing is that you tell them how do you fill in the the empty gaps in your days. So do you read? Do you write? What personal growth? So what interests you? I think for grad schools, one of the most underrated things for MBA is the diversity that they bring in their universities. And I think, and actually believe me, I come from an Ivy League university. I can tell you about it that grad schools are very attuned and very specific to the part that how diverse is the classroom or the cohort that I'm building, so make sure that you're telling them what are your interests. So if because look, they should be able to imagine a campus with you on the campus, and how diverse would you be. And then, like I mentioned, your references are very important. So I worked with someone on the ministry, so I've mentioned that. And I someone in the US, one of the schools that I was serving when I was a CEO, I mentioned that. So just remember that sometimes it has a very subtle impact on the overall image of your CV, that what do you actually do. Uh, I'd start taking any question that you guys have. In which application have you made CV? So I used a tool called novoresume.com. I think it's a fair tool, but also remember that your CV can largely be um, and should ideally be um, replicated on LinkedIn. So remember that. Okay. Um, Please kindly share important highlights or samples for the same, right? So I will make sure that my colleague Arushi will send you the recording of the video and also a few templates of a CV. So I can send you a good amount of templates, but I think just make sure that what's more important is that you're building a CV that is more aesthetically appealing, keeping in mind where are you sending it. If you're applying for an academic role, then it has to be both aesthetically, say, strong, but also very concise. If you're applying for research or you're applying for doctorate, then it has to be very academic intensive, where you highlight every single nuance of all the research you've done, the degree, the subjects that you've studied, all of that. If you're applying for a job, then it has to be very number driven, very number driven. And so depending on what is the exact outcome and who's reading it. And for a doctoral candidate or master's candidate who's going for a typical research driven degree, academic CVs are more important, and then it hardly matters how visually appealing it is. But for a normal grad course, like for an applied sciences course or a professional master's degree or an MBA, I think a visually appealing CV makes more sense. But just remember that ultimately, you know how many headers will go in, you know how much space do you have to fill in, and you can find a template for yourself. I just showed you a CV which got me a fellowship in UPenn and a job at upGrad. So just making sure they do that. But remember that the fact that I had done enough in alignment or synchronicity or coherence with the exact role that I was applying for. And when I was applying to University of Pennsylvania, it was a global education entrepreneurship degree. I was an entrepreneur in education. It made a lot of significance, right? I was working full time during my undergrad, so I was unable to get into a research project. No, so writing a book is a long process, but sometimes I think don't undervalue whatever you've done. Mention every single thing that you feel is worthwhile, is constructive, is substantive to the kind of course you're applying for, if it's constructive, if it's in alignment, if it is synchronous, if it is in concurrence with or consistent with where you want to go, mention it. But you don't have to wait for future things to finally apply. I'm gonna soon apply for job. Yeah, which is fine. Our family responsibility is accountable for like looking after myself alone, managing everything by myself. Um, I think some of these soft things can go into your SOP and not your CV. I think that makes more sense. Can we also get these slides for our reference? Absolutely, yes. Show us your own resume, another sample resume. I hope I mean, I did show you my resume. Which one do we need to submit to the university, resume or CV? So I think most universities will ask you for a crisper version, which is a student resume. But when you apply for a doctorate degree, then, sorry, when you apply for a doctoral program, then I think sometimes um, getting a proper academic CV makes more sense. All those CVs are mostly used when you've reached a certain level and you work for 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, and you're not a fresher. Then it makes more sense for you to apply or build a CV for yourself. Can I write down the language I know? Oh, yes, of course. Mention any languages that you know. I think that makes absolute sense, 100%. I think that pretty much sums up every single thing. Um, I think so. I have been able to articulate and effectively give you what I thought was the most important part of CV writing. We will get a recording of the space. So, why I don't give you guys templates or why I normally don't like talking about here's everything that should go in is because everybody's profile, background, work experience, internships are very different. And so, if you see, I have nothing listed there, which is an internship because I never did one. I've always been, so I graduated college, I became a CEO. During college, I was serving this student organization called ISEC. I was the team leader, then manager, then VP, then the chief. And for a part of the time, I was an envoy for them in the US. So I, but every person's headers are different. So which is why I don't give out templates. But I think one of the things that I really think should be important for you to know is that upGrad um, allows you guys to do a bridge course, to do a foundational course, to do an advanced diploma or a postgraduate program in the field of data science, in the field of computer science, in the field of AI, in the field of cybersecurity, in the field of management, in the field of business analytics, in the field of HR or finance and accounting or marketing or international marketing. Uh, all of these from some of the top schools in India for you to have a strong CV to apply to some of our universities in US, UK, or no, UK, US, Canada, Germany, Ireland, France, and be able to secure a master's there, even if you don't come from a data science background, even if you don't come from a management background, even if you don't come from a cybersec background, you do about 6 or 8 months of a concrete course, and you don't pay extra for that. That similar course that you're doing will result in credits that you will get a waiver against when you go to the US or Canada or UK or France or Germany or Ireland. So largely, long story short, is that you do 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 credits here, and then you get the 9 credits waived off in US. So you save a lot on cost, but also I think that makes you eligible and gives a weightage to your resume that I've done a course to be able to go to where I want to go. And so you get higher visa success, you get higher acceptance from universities because you've already done um, you've already done um, the coursework, the foundational skill set. And yes, Adarsh, upgrad 100% helps in building your resume, in helping you build your CV, and helping you write your SOP, in getting your LOR made, everything. So we definitely help you with that. We've got a proper team. Mentioning test scores makes sense in if you were really good, you may want to put it in your CV, but only if you're applying for a grad school. If you're applying for a job, then these things don't really matter. Your GPA does. Any ancillary or auxiliary test score is okay. I mean, you can put it if you're really if you've been able to score that level of score, sure, while applying. But good question. I think, in my understanding, if I logically think about it, it doesn't have to go anywhere. It can go in your CV if you've done really good, then maybe. So if it means GRE, if you've gone 330 and above 340, uh, you're okay. If you've got between 330, uh, to 340, you may want to mention that. Uh, but anything that you can't empirically find out from your documents is what's supposed to go in your SOP. So SOP won't make sense. And of course, you attach the GRE GMAT score anyway. Right? While applying for a scholarship in graduate school, do we have to totally depend on the grade that we have? No. What I was telling you, Bipasha, is I got a 100% scholarship based on the CV, and I have not gotten some exceptional scores. So, you know, some things depend. But imagine I was then a 25-year-old, 26, yeah. And I was applying for a school at 26, having about close to 4 years of CEO experience in a startup in the US and 15 countries in the world, having achieved $8.5 million of sales without a single penny of startup of investment in my startup, and had done 17 online courses, had served as the CEO of an international student organization, had traveled the world, and had spoken by then to at least 5,000 young folks in my keynote speeches across the world. The point I'm trying to make is these things matter, but don't expect them to matter if you've not done something outstanding. I'm not saying I've done something outstanding. I'm just saying they're looking for diversity. So if you've done something that nobody in the classroom has or looks like that it has, they will probably pick you. Do we have to attach our certifications? Yes, you should attach your certifications, but you should also attach all the relevant material uh, that that can demonstrate your work. For example, if I were you, I'll attach my LinkedIn page. Okay, I think that um, has a big role to play. Let me show you. If you're still here, here's my LinkedIn. So if I have to talk about my work, I can talk about my work on LinkedIn. So, for example, I've written a lot of articles based on education. I have done a lot of activity based on how much have we achieved every single day at upGrad. I keep recording my videos, I keep mentioning my videos. Um, I keep mentioning my roles. Um, I've put down all my uh, online courses on LinkedIn. So the point I'm trying to make is LinkedIn should be replicable, but because there's a lot of activity where I keep posting what do I do every single day, every single week. It makes sense to put down this so everybody knows what you're doing, right? It's not about the videos. The more part thing is that I love talking about what we do every single quarter. So your work has to speak for itself, right? I hope I could make that clear with you. LOA and LOR can be attached with your application. I think we've pretty much answered everything. Here's what I would like to pursue master's in a course which is totally different from my bachelor's. So, Christo, go through the entire course of your master. See what all terms, what all tools, what all languages, what all theoretical work, what is the scope of research, what is the purview of the course, and then see what all have you done. If there's nothing that you think that closely matches, then I would recommend you pick up a few online courses do them so you've got a good bridge. See, because realistically speaking, if you go into a very average school, they will accept you. But if you go into a very top-notch school, you will probably not make it. I can give it to you in writing because they're looking for folks who are academically ready. They're looking for folks who are academically more robust in their awareness and their knowledge and have a very profound, in-depth skill set, hands-on learning in that field. And if you can't make it, then might as well do courses. Now, if you're looking at data science or AI or machine learning or data analytics or business analytics or cybersec or AI or MBA, and all of these can be done with upgrad. So there's an online course. Instead of doing a random normal online course just for the sake of it, these courses that upgrad gives you can actually give you a credit waiver, a full waiver of 9 credits. That's almost 10 or 12,000 dollars of money or tuition fees that you can save, right? That is what we do. So I think might as well want to consider that. Um, and of course, we're willing to help you. I can put down my email address. Also, my colleague Arushi has put down the um, bachelor master program details, which you can always browse through. Here's my email address. We've got a proper program called Booster program in which we train you for CV writing, SOP writing, academic writing. We give you a profile building class. We give you IELTS training, and then finally, we help you apply to at least 5 international schools. But I think if you're trying to move streams, move or jump between cross-domain uh, degrees, then a foundation on an initial postgraduate program or diploma may help, which upgrad is a leader in. I think the fee for these courses from Triple IT Bangalore, IMT Ghaziabad is about 2.5 to 3 lakhs, after which you actually save up 9 course credits, which is 3 subjects, which is equivalent to about $12,000 of fees there, which is close to about 10 lakhs plus living cost for 6 months, another, let's say, 8 lakhs. So you're saving about 15 to 18 lakhs just because you're doing the first 3 courses here and the rest of 7 courses in the US or anywhere else. So I hope you understood the point that I'm trying to make when I say connect through diploma or programs. Yes, absolutely. US universities give you top-notch jobs. Specific verbs for students applying for bachelor's in computer science. Uh, Verbs, I think it depends on what you've done. And also others, I think the question that you're asking, colleges in US actually give you a degree, give you a proper rigorous academic coursework to study, and then you get an OPT, which is an optional practical training. And after that, I think the level of opportunities in OPT is pretty vast in the US. OPT opportunities will be always relevant to your exact field work, sorry, your exact domain, and should be there in plenty because look, US is the #1 economy in the world. And so whether colleges or universities, there's plenty of OPT opportunities that you can get in the US. I started one community with 300 people and we do frequent screening and I arrange the whole program with 2 other friends. Yes, absolutely. So, Monish, while you can mention that, just make sure that you're very strategic, keeping in mind what is it that they're looking for. Are you going to present yourself as an entrepreneur? Are you going to present this as an entrepreneurial experience, or are you going to present this as something that is relevant to the technology that you're using and which is what you want to study more of? If this has got to do with entrepreneurial experience, then mention it like that, that my entrepreneurial experience or my experience as a leader or my team management experience, and here's what we achieved. But quantify it. How many stakeholders? What is the revenue? How many folks? How much is the investment? Here's what we're gaining. Here is the year-on-year growth. Here is the year-on-year revenue. Here is the annual growth rate of growth. So, um, you know, that sometimes does matter, right? Sorry, the compound annual growth rate is what I meant. Any skill for which I do not have a certification, but I do know that skill, will it be comprehensive? You can, but remember, like I showed you my CV, when you're mentioning a CV, so sorry, when you're mentioning a skill, that you're promising to have. Mention experiences that have where you've demonstrated with outcomes that here's what skill I have. Does upgrade help bridge course for MBA? Yes, 100%. 100%. If you want to go for an IBM International Business Management, we'll do an IMT Ghaziabad Advanced General Management course. After that, you can enroll in 25 different universities in the world in an MBA and get nine credits or three courses waived off. 100% Imanshu. I have put down my put down my email address, and you can always mention mail me there. And Sakshi, what kind of internships? I think because this is very specific in the interest of time and the interest of everybody's time, I'd rather take this on an email. So just mention it to me, and I'll make sure that would definitely love to help you. I'd like to get the links. So LOR, SOP, resume, IELTS, online course to open data science, business analytics. Yeah, others just mention it to me, or instead of mailing it to me, others. So Arushi, my colleague, has mentioned on the chat box. I'm mentioning it again, and you can always use that and all of that. Yes, Manish, you should definitely mention that. If in case you want to access my CV, I think I would advise that you go to my LinkedIn and you can see the pattern in which I've mentioned every single rule, right? All right, then. I think in the interest of time, we should end this. I wish you guys good luck. I think it has been an absolute pleasure. It has been an absolute honor in hosting you guys. Please feel free to, mail me. I put down my email address on the chat box. It's praneet.singh@upgrad.com. Um, Harsh is asking, can you recommend some good course in general? I think business analytics, data analytics, and MBA in business analytics and MBA in cybersecurity leadership, um, and MBA in information technology, um, and MS in AI/ML, MS in computer science, and MS in bioinformatics, MS in project management is a very hot course. These things, I think these are really important, right? All right, then I think I wish you guys good luck. Please make sure that you write an email to me, and I will definitely love to answer you there. I'm working in an IT company where I get to have meetings with clients since I work with. How can I mention that in my resume to have me getting masters in US in the field of business analytics? I think so. Go to the business and analytics course and see the see some of the important points or terms mentioned there, and then mention how many data points do you track in a customer journey, which ones tell you, so the fact that how many stakeholders have you been tracking, how many customer journeys have you been tracking, what data analysis or what magnitude of analysis you've done, and how much year on year or quarter on quarter growth has it yielded, how much decision making could you aid with the data analytics tools that you were using. um, Mention about how many tools that you use at work. Mention the fact that using those tools, how much has your company grown in terms of its processes, exact hard growth, so on and so forth. Um, and the fact that how many cross domain departments or interdisciplinary transformations have you made in the entire organization in the HR, finance, marketing department by virtue of your business and analytics skills, right? So I hope you're getting the point. So largely, or if you want to mention stakeholders and mention that you've worked with so many stakeholders, yeah, which is why you're equipped. Um, I think you can always go back to my LinkedIn page and see it. So it'll be linkedin.com/in/ so in is in / Praneet S, and you will get it. All right, everybody, I wish you guys a great evening ahead. Thank you for giving me your valuable time on a Saturday evening. I wish you guys good luck. Thank you very much.